This is Support is Sexy, episode 218, with Carrie Kerpen, CEO of Likeable Media. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here because it just would not be the same without you. And today I am excited to have our guest, Miss Carrie Kerpen. And Carrie is the CEO of Likeable Media, which is a social media agency that has been around since 2006. And just to give you a little time reference there, it launched the year before Facebook went open to the public, not went public, open to the public, meaning the year before Facebook became available to all of us. So that tells you how long she's been in the business and the depth of Carrie's knowledge in social media. So this is a fantastic episode about social media, branding yourself online, a lot of great things because Carrie is about much more than that. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode, but tons of tips. Get ready to take notes. So on this episode, Carrie talks about how to boost your likability factor, the importance of listening first when creating your content, why most of us are data rich and insight poor. I thought that was very interesting. What women entrepreneurs need to know about creating content and social media, Carrie's top personal branding tips for women entrepreneurs, how to pick your social media platform. Are you like me and you don't know exactly where you want to be or quote unquote need to be when it comes to social media? Sometimes we have that struggle. Carrie tells us how to get through it. Also, what many brands get wrong about social media, why you must focus on your business being profitable, why there's no such thing as one secret to success, how to build your personal advisory board, and something I love, why self-care makes you a better CEO. So again, I know you're going to love this episode with Carrie. Plenty of resources. So make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com. Just search Carrie, Carrie, in the search box. Her show notes page will come up with all of the links and the resources there. All right. So now, without further ado, Carrie Kerpen. So Carrie, thank you so much for being here for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on this show, and I think it's such an important topic, really talking about the support that we need as women.
Thank you. Now, first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
You know, it's funny. I first fell in love with entrepreneurship when I knew that I needed control over my time. I had a 3-year-old daughter, and I knew that I was going to be able to consult in some capacity, but I never really had the confidence to start something. Even though I had had a lot of success doing different things that were very entrepreneurial, I never felt okay to take that actual risk until I really wanted more time with my daughter, and not just more time. It wasn't like I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I just wanted more control over my time. I wanted to be able to go to something if she needed me to. It's not that I didn't want to work. It's that I wanted to work on my own terms. And that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. It was that I knew I wanted to have control over my time, and nothing gave me that better than entrepreneurship.
That access to flexibility is such a big thing that we don't realize, until you really need it or want it, like you said.
Exactly.
Where did you grow up, Carrie?
So I grew up in Queens, New York.
Queens,
holla! I love Queens. I grew up, what I loved about Queens and growing up in Queens was that, it's not only the most diverse county in the country, it's the most diverse county in the world. There are so many different people from different backgrounds and ethnicities. And for me, that gave me a worldview that was so incredible to be able to not feel like there was one majority. We were all together in this incredible melting pot. It gave me the best upbringing ever. Very different from when I went to college. Like, I was so shocked. When I went to college in Boston, and I was like, wow, this is a very different experience than growing up in Queens. Queens represent love.
I have family in Queens. Most of my aunts and cousins are in Queens. I love it.
It's something special about Queens girls.
Yes,
Queens guys too, but really a Queens girl is real deal.
Something special. So what was a young Carrie like growing up in Queens?
A young Carrie had a lot of confidence. And I think that, I was a happy, confident kid. I was in an amazing singing group called the Glamour Girls.
What was it called?
Glamour Girls. It didn't go anywhere. It was like it was actually in 6th grade. Like we made a singing group, and like I couldn't sing, but I had the confidence to do it. And that's what to me is so amazing, is that when we're born, we're not born with a fear of we're not good enough. We're taught that over time. And I think as a kid, I was really confident. And then as I grew, I kind of became trained to be like, I don't know that I could really do that. Oh, I'm kind of good at that. Oh, but as a kid, forget it. I thought I was the greatest.
Wait, so as far as singing, I have to ask you this. Your intro for your podcast, All the Social Ladies.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I was like, is that her singing and harmonizing?
Okay. So I am on the background, but I'm not I'm not the primary.
You are with your confident self. You're back there.
It's
so good. Everyone, I'll have links to it, of course. Everyone, you have to. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. You just have to listen. I listened to it twice. Like, oh my gosh, this is the best intro I've ever heard.
I'm so glad you like the intro.
And the podcast, but the intro is amazing.
I'm so glad.
Now, who were some of your greatest influences growing up?
So growing up, I had a lot of different influences. I think I was very inspired by people who had sort of a je ne sais quoi that made them inherently likable and relatable, and how that kind of tracked to their success. For instance, I remember being so obsessed with why Deborah Norville was not successful on the Today Show, but Katie Couric was. Mm-hmm. It was because she had a level of likability and a level of relatability that Deborah Norville really didn't have. Similarly, watching Oprah growing up, watching her be able to connect with every single person she ever interviewed, every person in the audience. I have been obsessed for a long time with the ability to connect with lots of different types of people. And I think that for me, that came from growing up in Queens with so many different people. Nobody was the same. And the ability to connect and form relationships with people who are sometimes nothing like you, who may have totally different views and all of that. I think that watching Oprah and Katie Couric do that, early on, I really wanted to be a broadcast journalist. So I think these were the people I looked up to. And then as I got older, I really started looking up to a lot of entrepreneurs and people who have done what we're doing, bigger and better, and have really been incredible voices for women in entrepreneurship.
Do you think that likability that you mentioned that Katie and Oprah have is something that people can acquire, or is it just like Deborah Norville just doesn't have that thing? She's obviously a great journalist.
She's awesome.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Okay. I think that some of it is inherent, right? Like some people just have that. But I do think that there are steps you can take to be a little bit more charismatic, more likable, more relatable in a lot of ways. And a lot of that just comes from asking the right questions and finding common ground. I think that one of the things that Katie Couric did and Oprah did was they became almost a part of the story, in that they related to the people they were interviewing versus just asking the hard-hitting questions. It was about the kind of empathy and understanding. So I think some of that is within you, mm-hmm. and some of it can be taught.
I think about, as you were speaking, I was thinking about Diane Sawyer is another person that I look at like that.
Love.
Because she's able to, at least I think, ask the tough questions and be likable, or at least she makes you feel like she's as curious as you are.
Absolutely. And I think outside of journalism, you see that all the time. I mean, if you look at Sheryl Sandberg's latest book around Option B, mm-hmm. Sheryl got a lot of pushback around Lean In when she, it's very clear that she is, a strong career person, mm-hmm. and, pushes and pushes forward. She's telling women to lean in. And then with option B, she shows a much more vulnerable side of herself and in a way more relatable, so that women as a whole they may not be Sheryl Sandberg. They may not say, I want to lean in all the time, but now they kind of understand Sheryl Sandberg in a way that they hadn't before.
Right. It makes her feel more human.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Now, what kind of work did you think you were going to do when you were in school in Boston? What was the plan at that time?
Okay, so I first went to school for broadcast journalism.
Uh-huh.
I was totally clueless. Like when I went to college, I was like, oh, okay, I love Katie Couric. I wrote my essay about her to get in. I loved Oprah. I loved all of these women that were at the forefront of television. I decided I wanted to be in broadcast journalism. Pretty early on, I realized that the major wasn't for me. And so I kind of floated around a little bit. I thought maybe I'd be a film major and make documentary films for young women. And, I was always into this kind of concept of empowering women. I knew that I wanted to do that, but I wasn't exactly sure, how that would happen. So that was way back. I can remember that I was thinking, my wheels were turning about that for a long time. Ultimately, I decided to go into marketing and advertising at Emerson. And I really believe that I decided to do that because I watched the show Melrose Place and I was like, oh, look at this advertising agency. This looks cool.
Right.
Like I had no idea.
Right.
No idea. I was like, oh, Heather Locklear wears cool outfits and they come up with fun. Right. Like, honestly, that's about the about the level of thought that went into that decision. However, once I sat down in a marketing class, especially things like survey research methods and all the data, I really fell in love with it, both the creative side and the analytical side. And so that was, once I got there, my path to get there was a little messy. But once I got there, I knew I was in the right field.
So tell us about then that journey to creating Likeable Media and how that came about and what that moment was like for you when you figured out, okay, this is something that we're going to do. You and your husband started together.
Yes. Well, okay. So that story is very interesting. I once I graduated with my marketing and advertising degree, I stayed in that field. I went into brand marketing and then eventually left the brand side and went to the media sales side. And I sold a lot of radio, both for Radio Disney and radio stations out in New York. And I was happy, in a good space. And then it was time for me to get married. When I was getting married, my husband wanted a wedding that was larger than life. He wanted to have a wedding where not just, our friends from high school, he would literally be like, person on the street, you need to come to our wedding. You want everyone to see him get married. And I knew a few things. First, I knew that we couldn't find a place to hold that many people. Second, I knew that we probably couldn't afford it. And third, I had a starter marriage that ended after 2 years. And it was a nice big wedding. And I had a lot of shame about that. I felt like that was really hard. So how could I have a wedding with Dave? I couldn't have the same kind of traditional fancy wedding. I knew he wanted a lot of people and I knew we couldn't afford it or find a place to hold it. So we had to get really creative. It was a problem. And so we decided to get married on a baseball field at a minor league ballpark. We're huge Mets fans. So we got married. We went to the minor league affiliate of the New York Mets in Brooklyn. And we said, hey, we want to buy out your sponsorship for the night. And we essentially turned it into this kind of larger than life marketing event. We sold in sponsors in between innings at a game. So instead of like Pepsi tossing t-shirts into the audience, we had 1-800-Flowers toss bridal bouquets. So we invited brides to come to the game. It was a huge thing. And then all the park had to do was allow us to get married on the field after the game and then also have a party in the back. We pitched them this concept. We called it Our Field of Dreams. They said, you're nuts, but try it. So we decided to do it. We sold in $100,000 of sponsors, so we were able to get our wedding funded.
Wow.
We sold in $20,000 for the MS Society. We were able to raise money for charity, which was really important. And then the third piece was to get a massive, massive amount of press for these sponsors, which we did. They were on ABC World News Tonight, CNBC on the Money, the New York Times, you name it, they got coverage. And so after that happened, they came to us, all of these sponsors, they said, this was fantastic. You guys do great stuff. Do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Get married again.
We're not getting married again. We're not having a sponsored baby. Like, what are we going to do?
Right.
So So all of the, at this point, we floated the idea of starting a company around word of mouth marketing that, really, if you have a good idea, it can travel, kind of press related, kind of event related. Again, no real idea what we were doing, but we thought about doing it. And my husband was a teacher. He had our health benefits. He had kind of this stable job. I was a pretty big earner and now in sales management and media sales. And so I felt very afraid to step away and to take the risk. And yet, ultimately, what I decided, because I had my daughter at this point already, we got married when my daughter was 3, I decided that the time with her was more important. And so it actually wasn't the fact that we were able to do the almost impossible with this wedding. We were able to have this tremendous wedding with all of these sponsors, and it was beautiful, and it was done tastefully, and we raised money for charity. All of this stuff pointed to the fact that, hey, we can do extraordinary things. We could be entrepreneurs here. And yet my confidence still held me back. The only time the minute we actually started it was when Charlotte, I took her to daycare and she held onto my leg and she said, "Mom, don't go." And I was like, oh no, I want to be home today. And so I called my husband, I picked up Charlotte and I said, you know what, I'll come early. My commute was very far. It was long. I worked long days. And I called Dave and I said, you know what, I'm going to come home early today and we're going to start that company. And that's exactly how we started. And then for that was in 2006 and 2007. Social media really became a huge thing because Facebook opened beyond the college market. And so we were able to recognize that social media was the fastest form of word of mouth. And we pivoted pretty early to be a social media agency, call it luck, call it foresight. And from that point, it really grew.
Wow. And timing too, without even knowing. Yeah, timing and taking the leap that's a fantastic story. I have so many questions about your wedding, but I want to talk more about social media. But one thing though, the idea when you came up with, or you both came up with the idea of let's get married at a baseball field, was there a point when you thought this is crazy to even think this is possible?
100%.
Yeah.
I was terrified. I knew, what happened? Actually, it's funny. We were at a diner when we came up with the idea. I'll never forget it. We were sitting across from each other and it spilled out of my mouth and I saw his eyes light up. I was like, oh, this is no problem. We'll pitch a ballpark. We'll do this, the other. I saw his eyes light up and then I was overcome with fear. Like, how are we really going to do this? I think this is very similar to wanting to start a company and having an idea for a company and then going to actually do it. When it comes time to actually do it, it can be really terrifying.
Right. And the thing is, it's funny, as you said, his eyes lit up. When you want to start a business, you feel something, I've experienced this, you feel something light up in you and then the fear comes.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, they talk about, there's actually a great diagram somewhere which talks about the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. And it's like idea. And you go all the way up because you're so excited about your idea.
Right.
And reality starts to set in and like, how are we going to do this? Do we need to raise funds? What do we need to do? And then when the reality sets in, there's a real low of entrepreneurship. And then ultimately you get to a place where the idea and the reality kind of come together and it's a good place. But entrepreneurship has a lot of highs and lows.
Absolutely. Now your company, Likeable Media, is one of the, quote, first pure play social agencies. So tell us what that means.
So a social media agency, at least in our world, very early on, there was a tremendous need to understand social media. Mm-hmm. So brands had no idea what was going on and how they used this, and they were really afraid. And then B was they needed content for social media, and they needed, at that time as well, they really needed somebody to manage. Like once they put out the content, they would need people to answer all of this conversation that was suddenly taking place. Picture like customer service not being a thing, and then all of a sudden there's customer service. You'd be inundated. You have to build a department from scratch. You have to do all of that. And so in 2007, that was a time where people really needed A, to understand social media, B, to have content and have things to say for social media, and C, to be able to respond to all of the people that were talking to brands constantly. And so we dedicated ourselves to that very, very early on. Now, over time, that has changed. Social media has become a lot more, first of all, they've become a lot more sophisticated with answering people's questions online, and they've been able to educate their customer service departments to be able to answer a lot of these things. So, a lot of that has changed over time. That need is not as much. However, what the need is that there was a tremendous shift to two things. First, content was no longer just like putting up a picture or putting a status update. Now it's much more multimedia oriented. The types of content you put in social media are very different than they once were. A lot of video, a lot of movement involved. And then the second piece is that most of social media from brands has to be advertised, because if it's not advertised, it won't show up. They've built algorithms and different things to monetize the network. So all of these brands have to, and really should have to, pay to reach the average social media user. And so I think that in that process, we've evolved with that. So really, it's always rooted in what the heck do we do here in this rapidly changing social media world? And today, that's creating a lot of great multimedia content. And it's also making sure it reaches the right people using, advertising, influencers, and then a good understanding of what networks to be on and why.
And one of the things that I saw on your website is very important to Likeable is this idea of listening.
Oh, yeah.
Listening first, in fact.
Yes. Actually, all the content that we create is based on listening across the social web. So whenever we present a brand, a concept, we say, we know this will perform better than something else. The reason we know that is because we've listened across the web and here's the data to support it. So all of our content is rooted in data. And that's goes back to like what I was obsessed about in school in very early days. It's just understanding how to interpret data. And with social media, the thing is, we're very data rich. There's data everywhere. You could go on Twitter or any of these open source platforms and look up, what people are saying about virtually anything. We are data rich, but we are actually insight poor. No, there's not enough people taking the data from across social media, all of this mass conversation that's happening publicly, and translating it into something that what does this mean, in turning it into an insight? What does this mean, and why is it relevant to us? And so that's largely what social media has turned into, and certainly what Likeable has done to make our content more successful. By the way, I think listening is key, not just in social media, but in life.
Right. Exactly. I was thinking about that. Too many of us are talking and not listening.
Yep.
Exactly. So social media, I'm sure you would agree, has changed quite a bit since you started the business. It changes. I feel like every month there's something new. So if you were to give then one piece of advice that you'd want women entrepreneurs in particular to keep in mind about social media for their businesses, what would it be?
Okay, so it depends on the size of your business. The first thing I would say is, as a woman entrepreneur, this is the most important time in the history of entrepreneurship for women entrepreneurs. We are receiving more attention, more focus, more support than ever before. We have a long ways to go. But right now, if you look at the books that are coming out on women in entrepreneurship, there are a million. Like, you're looking at all of this information. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of buzz around women and entrepreneurs. So first thing I would do is make sure that your own personal brand is on point. When people go to look up you want to see who you are, what you stand for, and what type of company you're leading. Mm-hmm. For the company itself, it really depends on size and budget. What I would say for you as a female entrepreneur, the answer is to read, to always look at everything changing at the speed of light. And then I would either determine one of two things. One, do you love social media? If you do, then you can potentially do it yourself. If you don't, find someone at your organization or bring someone on who really loves it, because it changes so fast. If you don't like it, it feels impossible to keep up. If you find somebody who really gets it, a lot of times a young person who's totally techie and into this stuff, that will help you a lot. And so if you're looking on a limited budget, I would say find someone who loves it, or you may be in love with it. Pay attention to your personal brand, and also, really, really read. Keep up to speed on what's happening and where, and you'll get a lot of ideas just from reading. Just from reading Mashable or TechCrunch or any of these things, you'll start to get a lot of ideas.
Do you think, too, that people don't have to be on every platform? I always say pick your platform, but you being a social media expert, what do you think? It's just sort of like Snapchat. Snapchat is the new thing. Everyone needs to be on Snapchat. Do you feel like women need to, especially if you're a small business or, even a solopreneur, how do we decide which platforms we need to be on? You
need to consider two things. One, first of all, yes, pick your platform. Do not be on every platform, especially if you're by yourself. Time is money. And so there's two things. It's one, where is your audience? And then two, what do you actually like using, and looking at, what interests you and what is your audience on. If your audience is on something, let's say majority of your audience is on Instagram, but you hate Instagram. You don't know how to add the right filters. You don't know how to whatever. Clearly, you need to invest in somebody to be in that space and learn it well, because that's where your audience is. You need to go where your audience is. And you also should look at what you like to do. So one of the things that I recommend sometimes is if a network is early, right? So when Snapchat was emerging, there was a really interesting opportunity for people to make their mark on Snapchat when it's early. If you want to be an early adopter of something. So it might be that you are where your audience is today, but in particular, you or someone on your team has a fascination with where they're going to be tomorrow. That's a pretty interesting thing to look at too. So I would say my answer is be where they are today and always be looking for where they'll be tomorrow.
Great advice. Now, what do you think businesses or brands usually get wrong about social media? In your many years of experience, is there something that you see as a thread or something that comes up often that, they usually get this wrong?
I think that brands can be very tone deaf. I think sometimes they talk too much. I think in general, brands tend to be like, what do we need to say? What do we need to say? Let's push out content. Let's push out content. But the content will either not be good, or a brand will try and be human when they're in fact a brand. Like, I would much rather have actual humans, be they influencers, be they their community members, their fans. I would rather have them tell a story in the first person than have a brand try to act like a person. Now, that's personal preference. But for me, companies are not people, and they shouldn't act as such. So why does a brand need to comment on every single holiday? Oh, quick, we need a 4th of July post. We need quick, we need to this thing happened in real time, and we need a post to comment on it. The reality is, more times than not, a brand is better served by listening rather than having massive amounts of content that they're pushing out. Their content should be smart, good, and have a end game in mind, not just talking for the sake of talking.
Right. That's very good. And you're so right. Some days I feel like, holidays, and I feel like now there's so many new quote unquote holidays, or
Correct.
Today is Cupcake Day.
It's Grilled Cheese Day.
Exactly.
Let's comment. Except we're a furniture store.
Exactly.
Why does the furniture store need to tell me about
Right.
Grilled Cheese Day? They
Exactly.
don't.
That's so
Right.
true. What would you say the greatest lesson having your own business for the past 10 years has taught you?
Oh my goodness, there's so many lessons. First of all, I would never go back. Entrepreneurship is very hard. There are many nights through my career where I was up at night in a sweat about making payroll, or about losing a client, or about, all of these things. There's a lot of highs and a lot of lows. One of the things that I've learned is that over time, you need to come to expect and anticipate the highs and lows. Not every day of entrepreneurship is a cakewalk. In fact, most of the days are not a cakewalk, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. I think what I learned is not to get, as an entrepreneur, it's interesting because I'm an entrepreneur and I also tell stories on behalf of brands. For me, I have found that it is very important to make sure, and this is specifically for solopreneurs and people who have smaller businesses and ultimately bigger businesses too, but ultimately as you're bigger, you learn this. You have to focus on making sure that your business is profitable. I think it's very easy to get caught up in, we're high growth, we don't need to be profitable, we don't need to make money, I'm building something. But really, at the end of the day, money for women is power. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have a plan for how to make money as entrepreneurs, then we are setting ourselves up to lose even more of our power than we lost when we are working at a job for somebody else. And so it's really focusing on how can I make sure that I'm always monetizing? And maybe you're not monetizing right in the first minute, but there better be a plan for how you can really monetize this business. And when we ran our business in the early days, we were not profitable. And eventually, when I took over as CEO, my main focus was I need to get this business to be profitable and healthy and in a really strong space. And once I did that, I felt so much more powerful than I ever did before.
How many years was it? Was it about 7 years then that you weren't profitable before you took over? Or how many years was it before you started to see a change?
Okay, so we had a lot of sort of ups and downs. I would say that some years we were profitable, some years we weren't. we had only lost money a couple of years, and sometimes we made very little money. But really, I think for me, what it was about was when we were starting, we started as an agency in a time where there were a lot of tech companies. There was Buddy Media, Wildfire. These guys were acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars. And so we saw this in a different time. We saw this as like, okay, we focus on growth at all costs. When we grow, we'll get acquired for millions of dollars. It'll be so amazing. We doesn't need to worry about making money because eventually we'll get acquired and that'll be so much money. And so we ran it like a growth company. And then when I took over, you know, my feeling was that, first of all, social media was a much more crowded space. And this happens to every business, right? Things change. In 2007, social media was very different than 2013 when I took over. And so for me, this was really about, okay, we need to operationalize this to ensure that it makes money. I need to act as if I'm never selling, act as if this is my business for life and this is what I'm doing. Not care about the stars in the eyes that people have, like really focus on like, I'm going to run a good business here. And that was pretty much immediately we were able to do that. Once the focus shifted, because for me, it was so much less about ego and so much more about you know, being able to, it all comes back to freedom at the end of the day. I wanted freedom over time for Charlotte when I was started. And then it was about freedom through having power with money. I couldn't live like that. I needed to think about, okay, how do I make sure that we're profitable? And I was willing to give myself some time. I was okay. You know, when you first start a business, you're not going to expect to make a lot of money, but there should be a plan to get there and get there pretty quickly.
And I know your business is also rated one of the best places to work in New York City.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've created a culture there too that sounds like it's a good one.
Yeah, it was 5 years in a row we've won. And it was it's a great place to work. And I think ultimately that comes from setting core values of the organization and making sure that we do little things, you know, really things we listen. Again, it comes back to listening. We listen to what our employees want. We can't do all of it, right? Listen, they wanted every Friday to be Furball Friday with dogs running through this whole office. I can't always have dogs running through the office. There are people with allergies. I can't always have Furball Friday, but I can do, you know, one really cute day where the doggies come in and we do a photo shoot. You know what I mean? Like there are you can't give them everything they want, but you can give them not only, you know, some fun perks, but you can also give them a real sense of purpose through your core values.
How many people do you have in the company now?
42.
42. That's 42. Great, Carrie. I love it.
I love them.
That's great. Yeah. Now, you also have a book coming out called Work It, Secrets for Success from the Boldest Women in Business. When does the book come out?
It comes out in December. I'm very excited. It was a huge project. I'd never written before. And so it was quite the undertaking.
I remember I reached out to you a few months ago and your assistant was like, yeah, she's writing a book right now. So
anything.
Exactly.
She's writing it terrified.
Exactly. She needs a minute.
Yep.
What would you say?
All written now.
Very good. I can't wait. What would you say is one of the secrets of success from those women that really stayed with you?
Okay, so I will tell you, I'll tell you two things. One of the secrets of success. I feel that in general, the message of the book is that there is no one secret for success, right? Everybody has their own ways that they achieve success in their own lives. And when they have their own ways, it's because we all, like I said, coming back to Queens, New York, all come from different backgrounds, different experiences. We all have different stories. And when we have different stories, it leads us back to having different experiences and different things that work for us. So the book really gives you a bunch of different things that you can look at. I would say one of the things that I really loved was the concept of having a personal advisory board, or as we call it in the book, a PAB, personal advisory board. So rather than a mentor where you're focused on one person and there's a lot of kind of pressure around the concept of mentorship. How do we do mentoring right? What do we do? What's the process? It's really about forming, as if you were a company, a personal advisory board of people who are there to help you, that you call one person for one issue, maybe a personal issue in your life. You call one person about a career issue. You call one person about something that you're not sure about your next step. It's people who are invested in your success. Rather than having one focused mentor, it feels like, you know, you really need a village. And so that concept was one of the best secrets for success that I've seen.
That's a great one. I actually know someone who does that, and she actually has, I don't know if they're quarterly meetings, but she does a call where she invites the people on her personal advisory board to be on this call, and they sort of dedicate some time together to helping her with these different things. And it's people from different industries that she's known, throughout her career, some people from her when she went to school years ago, but it's the same concept. But I had never thought of, oh, you actually have a meeting where you update them on what you're doing.
That's amazing. She actually should have been in the book. That is awesome. That's an awesome story.
I was like, what are you talking about? But it's just a great, great idea.
Yep.
And then also in an article that you wrote that I found so interesting, your writing, it's so great overall.
Thank you.
But in an article you wrote on Inc., you talked about the moment when you became the CEO in 2013. And during that time, you realized that you had to take care of yourself first.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Want to be a better leader, put yourself first. So I still struggle with this every day. I'm an entrepreneur. I have 42 employees. I am a mom. I have 3 kids. Mm-hmm. I have a husband who has lots of aspirations and lots of different things. I have friends. I have, a lot. Oh, I have charities that I'm involved with. You name it. Like, we are busy. We are as busy as can be. And ultimately what I found as a leader was that I could not be a good leader unless I put myself first. And that actually ran through as a mother, as a wife, as all the things. And I needed to take care of myself and get healthy. That was a very, very important lesson that I learned, and one that I still refer back to, especially when I'm struggling, because, by the way, that's an ongoing journey. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to say, okay, I'm going to take time for me. I'm going to focus on my health. I'm going to focus on my eating. I'm going to focus on my meditation. I'm going to, really focusing and putting yourself first is a very strong key to success. However, it's very hard to do. So you have to, as women, we are trained to not do that. We are trained to help others and be a good little helper and do all of these things. But ultimately, you can help others much better when you focus on taking care of yourself.
What was your first step in doing that once you decided, okay, for me to take this over? Because I know in the article you sort of mentioned that you had a bit of anxiety about it at first.
Yes, I was very anxious because I didn't want to give up all the things I love. Mm-hmm. For me, the primary trigger was weight. So I called the nutritionist, and she was so incredible. Her name's Nikki Ostrower in New York. She was really focused on the entire person. And she helped me first start with eating, which I was like miserable about because I did not want to stop eating all of my cookies, but I did ultimately. It's not that I never eat cookies now, but I definitely think more when I do. And so she, got me in a good place, feeling good about myself. An interesting thing with weight and body image is like, it's not even that you have to lose so much weight. It's when you eat better, you feel better about your body. Even if you haven't lost that much weight yet, you still feel a lot better. And then she introduced exercising, and then we introduced, really a concept of gratitude, a daily gratitude journal, and a lot of different things that helped me become a much better, not only person, but ultimately better leader, better mom, better wife.
Are there things that you still, as you said, sometimes you might eat a cookie here and there, but overall, do you feel like there's things that you that you keep in place?
I think the number one thing that I keep in place is a concept of self-acceptance and gratitude, is like really writing down 3 things that I did today that were great, helped to boost my confidence, and then focusing on some of the things that I'm grateful for. And I think that's something that anyone can do, no matter what you're struggling with at the time. You can always find the good in the day and the good in the people around you.
Another thing that you talked about in that article was, which everyone, I'll have a link to it, of course, but was about this idea of becoming confident enough to step into the light, into the spotlight, because you were already part of the business. It's just you weren't CEO at that time.
Oh, yeah. So the story of this is that Dave, left the business. He had run it. And as I mentioned, run it like a growth company. He then wanted to impact more people. And so he started a software company for small businesses. He felt that social media was the great equalizer. All kinds of businesses could benefit. So he opened Likeable Local, which is a software service for small businesses to help them with their social media. So in 2013, he did that. And in 2013, I had been running the behind the scenes of the business. I had basically been executing Dave's vision. And I had to come up with my own vision for this and my own viewpoint and how I was going to do anything. And with that, I also had to, because social media is so public, I had to be comfortable being the face of the company. And that was really, really challenging for me because I didn't feel good about myself and I didn't have the confidence as a leader. And once I put myself first, I was able to be much more confident and be able to really focus on being at the forefront and being the face of the company. And ultimately, that's what led to me starting my podcast and having a whole concept of connecting women in digital, which I've been doing for 3 years now.
Excellent. What would you say then that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Entrepreneurship has taught me that I'm stronger than I think I am, that I know what I want, even if I don't think I know what I want. I do. It's like, that's the thing. It's like, I was never sure, like, is it about, am I an entrepreneur because of the money? Am I an entrepreneur because of not wanting to work for somebody? Ultimately, for me, it was about freedom over my time. And that's what I value above all else. I would certainly be an entrepreneur making much less money than take a job that paid more money somewhere else. It's not about the money for me. For me, it's about time. And being an entrepreneur has taught me to have confidence in myself and my own vision, because it did work, and sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But ultimately, it's the same with everything in life, right? You just got to keep going and keep trying.
Mm-hmm. What does your support network look like, either personally or in your business?
Well, I definitely have a FabPab, a personal advisory board that I use, but I also have an incredible support system at Likeable. I hired I actually promoted from within someone to the president role. Her name is Rachel Hadley, and she's incredible. And they have underneath her, she has a support system of incredible managers. She has a head of strategy, a head of creative, and a head of accounts that do really wonderful work. So there is a system in place of support, because I could not do this, and even Rachel could not do this without the support of the team underneath her. So for the company itself, I found support was key. That was really important. And at home, my strongest support, of course, is my husband, Dave, who is an incredible advocate for me. It's funny, I'm going on live TV later, and I haven't done live TV in a long time. And I texted him because he does it all the time. I'm like, Dave, it's like, give me all the secrets. Tell me what to do. And so, of course, I get this slew of amazing advice. It's like, it's so incredible to be married to somebody who's been in this with you and has done these types of things before. He's an incredible support to me because we have a lot of similar paths, right? He's written books, and he, started a company and all of these different things. So he's able to offer me a lot of advice. And then I have great people around me. It's just a network of women. Also, I belong to The List, which is a great women's group online for New York City women and beyond. Really powerful women offering advice to one another and help.
Excellent. I love it. You're going to be fantastic on TV. You've already told me about your dress. I'm convinced. You're going to be fabulous.
I hope so. We'll see. I'll let you know. If it's a fail, I'll send you the link.
It won't be. I won't accept it. So in closing, Carrie, if you think over your life and career, and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be, and what would you say?
One person. Oh man, this is so hard. I would thank my mom. My mom has been an incredible supporter of my career and my life. My parents were government employees. They were not entrepreneurs in any way. They often looked at me and said, "Where did you come from? We don't understand this." But I'll tell you something. I know exactly where I came from. My mom was very entrepreneurial in thought, even though she didn't take the risk to do it. She has a lot of entrepreneurial thinking that is key that I know I got from her. She's a tremendous support. She copy edited my whole book. She read the whole thing, and she wrote so many edits. I was like, whoa. She's just the best. I mean, she's a perfect example of resilience and just an incredible person.
Yay, Mom.
So thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom. And also she'll listen to this for sure.
Excellent. So now tell us, Carrie, how can we support you? Of course, as I mentioned, I'll have links to everything and the great resources that you mentioned, but tell everyone how we can find you and social media, of course, and all that good stuff.
Okay, so across social media, pretty much everywhere, I am Carrie Kerpen, CarrieKerpen. You can listen to and subscribe to my podcast, which would be great, which my podcast is called All the Social Ladies, where you'll get to hear the amazing jingle where I sing back up. And then not only that, All the Social Ladies, you can look for, coming soon for pre-order, Work It, Secrets for Success from the Boldest Women in Business. And that should be ready for pre-order on Amazon pretty soon.
Excellent. And your website is carriekerpen.com.
carriekerpen.com. You can find me anywhere.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carrie. This was so fun.
Thank you
enlightening.
So much, Elayne. I'm so excited to be on.
Thank you. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Ready? This is my one piece of advice I always share. Even though it's really a quote, but it's so true. Worry is a misuse of the imagination, because really worry and fear is what holds us back most of the time, and it's totally useless. What good does fear or worry get you? If there's something really to worry about, unless it prevents you from doing something that's horrible, really worrying about something is totally useless. So if you're thinking about pushing forward in your business and you're unsure, just remember that worry itself is just a misuse of brilliance within you. You have all of this idea to imagine. You have all of these possibilities to really think and imagine, and you're spending that the imagination that you have within you thinking about what bad things can happen, and instead start envisioning what good things can happen, and you'll see a big change.
Excellent. Carrie Kerpen, hold on just a minute.
You got it.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Carrie, chock full of information. You know, you can go to supportissexypodcast.com. Just search Carrie, Carrie. Her show notes page will pop up. All of the resources and links to everything that she mentioned in this episode will be there for you to easily access, including a link to pre-order her new book that's coming out in December. So you want to make sure you go to supportissexypodcast.com to find out more about that and to find out how to get in touch with Carrie. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. You know, I truly appreciate you. And while you're listening, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss anything. I want to make sure that every time you go to your phone or your car, your device, wherever it is, we are there for you. We have some fantastic interviews coming up. You don't want to miss it. So be sure that you subscribe. All right. Again, I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. And now you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.